So, as you know, as it goes, social media is a big part of our lives, and there's always somebody posting something interesting on the internet. So, there is this post I ran into. I'll post. A woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. What do you guys think about this statement?
Mm, I mean, from the get go, I don't know, like if a fish needs a bicycle to begin with. Like, I don't think they have any, to do with each other. So, but beside that, I mean, for the concept, what I understood is like, okay, a woman cannot be functioning or doing anything without a man. So she needs necessarily a man to do certain things or anything. So, I mean, in the old days, I'll talk about it in the culture that I've been raised as well. So in our culture, our moms used to raise kids and be in the house, so the housewives, and then the man does the rest of the things, which is like taking care of the house, and then you know, electricity or anything breaks, they're the one who's gonna fix it. The woman doesn't do that. But in this era, or the era that we're living in, that's not how it is. But I would say, from a married perspective as well, like when you're by yourself as a woman, it's not being I'm not imposing on feminism, but in a way that I know for a fact feminism doesn't say like a woman does everything by herself, but in a way that you need a support, which is you need a partner that you can collab on everything that you do, which is it might be simple things that you can do, but still being with someone else, even in financial aspect of life as well. It Instead of spending, you're putting on your financial and one thing, and then having someone else coming in together and then investing together would be easier and more, it brings more to what you do in life. But as I wouldn't think that a woman is crippled without a man. Have done so many things without my husband being involved in it, you know what I mean? um I was able to do so many things without my husband being involved. But at the same time, when he's involved, it's a lot easier, and then a lot, perfect, because like you see things that you can do together and the things that you can do together. Like it doesn't in our house, in the culture that we raised, if my mom or like our extended family see my husband cooking and stuff like that, that would be like, what, you cook? Like that's a woman's job, you know what I mean? But it's the culture that we lived in previously with our parents or our mothers or like our ancestors. But now in this era, I don't think we're men are crippled because of like without a woman, or a woman is crippled because of a man, like a man not being involved in your life. But I think as a positive light, it's better to be two instead of one. That's how I see things, but not in a way like, I'm like, I always say, like, whenever people say stuff, even like with my single age, when a man opens a door, I don't like it, because I used to say, I'm like, I'm not crippled. I can open the door. Like, show me your affection with other stuff. Now, by opening the door, it doesn't mean just because you open the door, it doesn't mean you respect me. You know what I mean? So, in a way that in a positive way, um instead of handling stuff like alone, it's better to do it together, or like having someone who can help you with things. But at the same time, I don't think a woman is like crippled just because a man is not in her life.
True. Understood.
I mean, my take from that would be, so is it a need or a want? A woman having a man in their life. What do you think from a married perspective, Lensa?
I would say a want. It's not a need. I
Okay.
mean, like, how do I say it? Like, I think because I when I was raised, I didn't had a like a father figure. So like I always think I might not be the right person for this as well, because like I would be always thinking like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like I've never said like, okay, I'm gonna do this with someone else. You know what I mean? But after I got married or like in a relationship, I've seen how it could be easy, but at the same time, I know how I can do it. So like if you're gonna be here, like for the same, if you're gonna be here in my life for the same reason that I can be here, you know what I mean? That's the same thing that I'm doing for myself. But are you being there for emotionally, being like, you know, being there as well? Or is it like the man thing that you can do certain things? But I've done that before by myself. So that's not why I chose this life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So from a marriage perspective, I don't think it's a need thing, but it's a want thing. It's because I wanted it, not because I needed it just to begin with. I got into it. That's how I felt.
Okay. Keith?
Yeah, I was going to say, Keith is the man out here.
Yes.
Why do I have to go next?
Because I can go next if you
But
want.
you know, from a man perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, especially when I see that post and I look at all this about need and want and do you need a man? To me, it's we've taken something simple and we made it complicated, and it's really kind of playing semantics, right? So we say, well, you don't need a man, well, or we don't need a woman or whatever. It's like, well, it depends on what type of life you're trying to live. If you're talking about just if there's certain things in life you want, yeah, I think you do need a male presence. But I think what's happened over time as well is when we get in these modern times, a lot of things that you do need from men have been supplemented by other things that still are produced by men, but just not in the context of a relationship. Protection, even the infrastructure where you're able to be in a safe society where y'all could go out and make money without worrying about being brutalized by men to, back in the day where the strongest survived, well, women, let's be honest, women weren't that strong to go out there and hunt and stuff like that. So you need a man to do that in order to survive. Now we've civilized society, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we've civilized society where that's kind of been supplemented, right? So there's that aspect of it. Also, too, it depends on what degree of life are you trying to have. I always say, like you were saying, Lanza, 2 incomes is better than 1. So you have a man who comes to you and say, well, I make $1 million and maybe you make $500,000. You're like, well, I make my own money. That's true, but $1 million is still $1 million. Like if I have a Mercedes Benz and somebody say, hey, Keith, you can have this Mercedes Benz. 2 are better than 1. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I have a Mercedes Benz. No, it's still a Mercedes Benz. It's still worth something. Yeah. I think it's that part. And for me, I think a lot of times when I see these posts, what it sounds like to me is when a lot of women speak about the whole, well, I make this, so I don't need that from a man. What it sounds like to me is trying to kind of devalue what a man brings without specifically saying, like, listen, you have money, that is something, that is worth something, but do you have the emotional, will you be there emotionally to support me as well? So for you, it's like, I do value that you have resources, but that can't make up for the fact if you're completely absent emotionally. And I think that needs to be said instead of this thing about, well, I don't need a man. Because though I guarantee you that same person that posted that probably would be running behind men, probably be right. They either married or they're like,
yeah,
oh, why doesn't this guy call me back? And even from an emotional standpoint, right? If you saying like I need emotional support, well, the key word in there that you say is I need a man who's gonna. You need that. If you truly didn't need a man, none of us would seek the opposite sex for anything. We would just go about our lives. None of us would worry about being married. None of us worry about being in relationships. None of us would even worry about being, booed up or cuffed up for the summer, if that was the case. So I think it's kind of one of those things we put these posts out to kind of, everybody's trying to leverage. Everybody's trying to leverage, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to leverage yourself over the opposite sex. Everybody seems to be doing that. And to me, these posts, that's really what they are. They're just a way to try to leverage over men. Like, what y'all have isn't enough for y'all to demand anything of me. Because I've noticed a lot of times now, people, they want something, but they don't want the effort and the things that comes with. They don't want to hold up their end of the bargain. They want you to give them everything, and they don't want to give up anything. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, that's what, when I see these posts, that's what all of it's saying. We hide behind, we kind of, it's disingenuous to hide behind these semantics. Well, I don't need a man. Well, yeah, you could be, you could be a homeless woman surviving, living under a bridge. Yeah, you don't need anybody, you know? Or like people say, I don't need a job, or I don't need this job. But like, yeah, if you want to live a, you know, below means, you know, lifestyle, which that's fine if you want to live that. But it's like, it's about where you want to be in life. Certain things you want in life. Like if you want a family, I'm sorry, you need the opposite sex. I know people, you know, they do the single parent thing, but we see the results of that. There's just not very good. So I think that's what I think about it. I think it's really just I think honest, reasonable people like us try to have reasonable conversations behind a post that really isn't intended to be reasonable. It's really just intended to try to leverage something. That's why a lot of times we argue and we go back and forth, and you know, we're like this and that. But we're reasonable people trying to debate something that wasn't, the intention wasn't reasonable. The intention wasn't good faith. It was disingenuous from the start. So that's kind of what I think about when I see that post or when I hear that type of rhetoric.
I don't think the post itself was disingenuous. I think it was more ambiguous. It was too sort of open-ended. And the first part of it needs more attention than we're giving it. It says a woman without a man. So it's basically telling you that someone who, by some circumstance, doesn't have one can survive. That's basically what I think it's saying. And I think that's true to some extent. But because we're always trying to play this man against woman, whether we need people or want people, but always trying to play that game, everyone has gone ahead to see it as saying, oh, I'm going to make a choice to deliberately not find a man because I don't need one. Or I'll make a choice to find a man because I do absolutely need one, or I do absolutely want one, whichever case works for that person. So I do agree with what all of you are saying to some extent. In terms.
So I mean, I get where everybody's coming from, and I think I have the same sentiments. The thing that kind of, because as soon as I saw this post, I was like, wait, what? And then I went through the comments, and then I see like a lot of people are like, oh, I mean, if this is how women feel, then like, why do you need a man in your life or whatever? But to an extent, I don't think that this was really saying that women don't need men. I almost want to say it was just saying, you know, instead of like basing your whole survival as a woman, just because I think this is from the time when feminism was like going in. I don't think this is like, you know, just 2022 type situation. So I think this is one of those little slogans that they had, like, okay, yeah, it's good to have a man around, but at the same time, you know, you don't have to base your whole existence off of a man. Like, I am the age that I am. I have survived without a man, right? I'm not crippled. I'm not like downtrodden or anything like that. So the presence of a man in my life is because I want him to be around. And this is kind of where I was going to go with this anyways. I guess we'll do that, the topic after this. Because I want you to actually know, is it better to be needed in a relationship, or is it better to be wanted in a relationship? Because for me, this post, that's where this question comes up. Like, do you really want to be needed, or do you want to be wanted? You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think want is better than need, or need is better, or do you equally need? Do you have to have both in a relationship?
I would say needing and wanting. Um, I kind of grew up thinking you needed a partner, but my experience being single has kind of taught me that, I can do both, but it's similar to what Keith said. It's what you want out of life at that point. If I want companionship and I want the family structure and I want all that stuff, then I will need a man. It's not about wanting a man. If I'm not looking for that at this point in my life, then I would want a man, but not need a man. So, yeah, that's where I stand on that.
Let me start with the want and need. So with the want and need, my problem with want and need is to be wanted is you're going to be wanted every day. But if being needed is when someone is done with the things that, at that certain age, they might need that, but after a while, they might not need you. So you're disposable. That's what I'm saying. Even in a job, when an opening is out, and then when you're getting hired, at that point, they need someone to hire for that specific position. But when that job is done, you're disposable and you're going to get fired. So that's how I see being needed and being wanted. But being wanted is because it's out of you that, oh, I want this person because, they fulfill in a certain way that some things that I couldn't fulfill, or like, but it's like affection or all of those being together. But needed is like, I see it as a job. So you're fulfilling a job position, and then when you're done, you're getting disposed. That's how I see
agree.
it.
That's actually really good. I agree. I never thought of it that way, but I definitely agree. And I do prefer to be wanted more so than needed, because I feel like you're making a choice to want me to be in your space.
Yes.
And I'm making a choice to want you to be in my space, rather than, oh, I need, somebody to help me pay the rent. So now you're here, and then you go and you make 200,000, and all of a sudden you don't need me anymore. And then you're like, oh, she just wants money. You know what I mean? I want you.
And even in Keith's, what you said is like,
I don't just need you there.
You said, like you need a job, in order to fulfill that life standard, right? Mm-hmm. So, but when the time gets, let's be honest, we're working, and then we're hustling right now because we want to be somewhere in the future. But when we get to that future, we won't be needing what we needed today. So we're going to dispose it, and then we're going to need something else. So you know what I mean? What I would see is like, okay, if someone needs me right now, it's for right now. And then when they need me, and then they fulfill what they've needed, and then they're going to find something they need, and they're going to leave. But one thing that comes from your inner self, which is like, one thing is like being, I don't know, like it's something, it's a different feeling than being needed. Mm-hmm. So that's how I see it.
If I can say something about that before you go on, I feel like you're saying needs are short term and wants are long term, but I feel like you can have.
There's no. Don't get me wrong. There's no long term in this world. That is for sure.
Well, it's relative. The word we'll use is relative. Long term is relative. Long term could be 10 years. Long term could be 5 years. Long term could be 5 years. But what I get from what you're saying is that a need is more short term than a want, and I think there's some needs that are longer term. Yeah, I mean, the need for a companion is quite vague, but I feel like someone could need a companion for 30 years.
Or even longer.
Or even longer, yeah. The type of companionship that you have might change as the relationship grows and as you grow as a person, or the two people grow, but you still need that kind of partnership and companionship, and it's a need for you because you feel like you're a stronger person or you're a better person having that partner by you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right. But in a sense that what I would think is like if someone wants, so a need is based off of something that we, like we put in our head, okay, in order for me to do this, I need this. You know what I mean? Even in the sentence that we use it, need is like, okay, I need this to do this. But I want it as a passion, like, okay, I want it as a passion, creating a family is a passion. For me, creating a family, extending my family is a passion that I would be fulfilled with that, which is a lifetime happiness and, all of that. But a need is like, oh, I need this in order for me to live life. It shouldn't be like that, especially when it comes to a relationship. It doesn't have to be a need, it has to be a want. I'm passionately like, I passionately need this is a want for me, like in my perspective. But needing is not, you know what I mean? Needing is when you need something in order to pass some, some it might be
something.
yeah, it might be culture. Like in the culture, people want you to get married and have kids and stuff like that, but it's not because you wanted it. It's just because it was needed of you to do those things.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it, and that's how I picture need and want in my perspective.
I guess it's all depends on who you are and what your culture is.
Yes.
In terms of me saying a need as a companion is it's the way you love.
Mm-hmm.
Some people want to be loved in a I can't live without you, I'm out or my life's gonna crumble without you. That would be a need to them. But some people want to be loved in a way where, like you said, it's passion, something that comes from the person, and they just want it, but they're not going to wither away if they don't have it. So but I'm not sure it's healthy. Maybe that's another topic to discuss, whether it's healthy to need someone to be with you.
Yeah. So
I don't know if we should go into it or if we should.
So
well, and that basically said for me, as far as the needed and wanted thing, here's my thing. A lot of people say when you're needed and when you're no longer needed, then you kind of get tossed aside. Not that that's not true, but the thing about it is wanted isn't any better, because because wanted is just as frivolous, is as fickle as being needed. In fact, in a lot of instances, is more so. So somebody could want you for something now, and they could change a year from now, and they don't want you anymore. And then another thing too is I think we don't quite understand how interlocked needed and wanted really is. Needed and wanted a lot of times is the same thing. It overlaps. We try to make these differences, but it's really the same thing. So for example, I want something because I have a perception that I need it. Or even the things that you claim you need is more so a perception of I need this. Maybe not you, maybe you don't actually need it. Same and that's where wanted comes from, right? You want something because at some level you believe that you need it. Even if you don't objectively need it, it's not like water or food to survive. You feel like you need it at some level, right? So they're interlocked. And to me, either one could be fickle, to be honest. I get you want to be wanted because maybe as a woman, maybe you want the man to want you around, right? You want him to want you around. But part of him wanting you around is a sense of he needs you around. He needs that, I don't know, I guess that emotional, that emotional stimulation that you give him, and that's what creates a want. We want things that we perceive that we need, that fill a need. We don't want things that don't feel some need on some level. Needs have different levels, right? Some are paramount, some needs are frivolous that we could do without, right? But it's still kind of a need at some level. You know what I mean? Like we don't just want things that we don't feel like we need. So to me, they're interlocked. So it's kind of a, would you rather be needed or wanted? I would say both. I personally would say both. I don't think one is really more important than the other to be honest.
Hmm.
As a man, I think as men, we do derive. See, I think it's different for men and women, to be honest, because we're not the same. We're different. I think women are go a little bit more to the wanted side, right? Because you want to be desired. You want to feel like you're sexy, you're beautiful, you're fun to be around, right? Men is more so we want to be needed. We want to
Because
feel
I
like
am. Like what?
allegedly,
Yeah.
but
Ow.
but for men, we more so on the needed side. You know, I want to be useful because men like to be useful. Part of
Yeah.
being useful is you're needed, right? Going back to the example of a job, right? You say a job needs you. Well, that leads into them wanting you. One of the reasons jobs want you is because you need it, you fulfill a need. So that's why I say those things kind of interlock a lot of times. Going back to M. Rose's point too, needs can be very long time. I mean, long term. There are a lot of long-term needs. In fact, I think there are some needs. I think there are more needs that are long-term than wants. Because to me, wants is very fickle. It's based on emotion, based on how you feel at that moment. He may want you, and then maybe down the line he wants a brunette, and you're not a brunette, or maybe he wants a blonde, maybe he wants a blue face, right? That's what he wants though. So now he no longer wants you.
Get a
You
new
know what I
wig.
mean? You said what?
Exactly. Get on your wig. You're
Nah,
right.
that doesn't work. I'm sorry,
I'm
it don't
right.
work. But
That's
that's
right.
kind of where I'm at on that. Yeah, so that's where I'm at on the needed and wanted.
I mean, I understand on the man and woman perspective of need and want. Men needs, they want to be needed because, like,
Mhm,
that's what drives them, and woman needs to be passionately like wanted because
mhm.
emotionally they want to be. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And then two, I'll say this about like with women. I think there are certain instances where men want to be wanted, right? And then there are certain instances where women want to be needed, right? So, for example, you have children. You want to be needed by your children, right? Because it's like if your children can be nurtured by somebody else, this is why a lot of women don't like nannies and people raising their kids. They say, "Oh, I don't want somebody else raising my kids," but it's really that need gone. Because if your kids are being basically raised by somebody else, if they're getting that loving care from somebody else, you end up saying like, "Okay, I pushed them out of my vagina. Thanks, you're welcome."
Yeah.
And they're just kind of like you're just kind of sitting there, right? For a man,
You did
he
the
kind of
hard part.
wants, yeah, exactly. For a man, he kind of wants to be wanted by his woman. Like, I don't just, sometimes it's like, I want you to need me, but I also want you to want me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to just be, just oh, you're just the guy that, handles this, that, and the third. It's like, no, you want somebody to desire you a little bit.
Mhm.
Even sexually, right? Even men sexually, we want a woman who wants us. We don't want you just there out of some favor to be. Most men, not all. Some don't care. I give you that. Some don't care. Some just like, oh look,
Some
let's get
just
it
want
on.
to be touched.
Yeah, exactly,
Hallelujah.
exactly. So I think it really interchanges. So it's really hard for me to. It's like for me needing one. I think of it like a car, right? It's like the engine and the transmission. You need both of them. Without
Yeah.
either one, the car is not going to do anything.
Mm.
So that's how I look at it. Really, me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like a better way of answering it, right? Because legitimately,
That's
my
diplomatic.
spirit,
Diplomatic answer.
yeah, and I think to an extent is right too, because legitimately, because of the past situations that I've been in, I think this is why I find myself leaning more so towards being wanted rather than being needed, because the last thing I want is for you to need me because you need help with, I don't know, your homework, or you need help getting a ride from one place to the next, or you need, or you just need a body or whatever. But like, if you want me to be in your space, that means when I text you and I say, oh, should I come over? Don't be like, oh yeah, you can come if you want. Like, no, tell me, come through. Don't talk about if you want. The hell, like, you know what I mean?
You really
But
hate
yeah,
that phrase.
I
I've heard you say
cannot.
it before.
I cannot. If you want, like, it's so like detached. Want me to come? Say yes. I want you to come. Be here at 8, and let's do A, B, and C. Don't say, oh, if you want. It's like you're nonchalant. Do I matter? Anyway, a whole
The bigger
tangent.
thing too is like it's interesting what you talked about like you don't want to be needed for a ride and stuff like that. It's interesting when you say that, because to me it's not necessarily that they pun intended wanted you for the need, is that the needs weren't long term. That makes sense, right? So that's what it depends on, right? Same thing with the wants. If the wants are short term, you're not going to have it. So it's really not even about the need or want. It's about whether it's short term or long term.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to M. Rose's point, right? They needed you for the very, short term things that aren't long, don't last. You know what I mean? And they didn't want you for the long term things. Like if like for instance, a man could want you around, but it's like, well, I'm bored. I ain't got no other woman. I want her because she's around, right? So he wants you. But once he gets attention from somebody else, or he feels that want from maybe the woman he actually wants.
Bored. When you say bored, you mean bored with who?
No, just bored. Like
bored
they're just bored
with me.
No.
Oh, it can never be.
They'll want you.
He's the boring one. I'm sorry.
You
He's
know
the
what?
boring one. It can never be. I am not a boring
No,
somebody.
that's I wasn't saying bored with you. I'm saying he's coming to you because he's bored. He's saying, I want you because he's bored. Oh yeah, see, I'm sure you don't like that either. But see, that's a want. You get what I mean?
It looks like he got lost.
Short term.
Yeah. He got lost on his way to the to that other, not me, because how dare you? But okay.
But see, that's still a want though. You see how that it matters.
Yeah.
Because the wants you want, I'm sure when you say you want to be wanted, it's long term things, right? Like I want her around long. See, that's long term. It's the same thing with needed. If you need me, I want it to be like a long term need. Oh, I need you around because you're always going to be here. You're the way you operate. I know no matter what's going to happen, you're going to be able to adapt to whatever situation comes and provide me whatever that I need. And to me, that's more long term, and it's really about long term versus short term, as opposed to whether you want to be needed or wanted. To me, that's the biggest thing, as opposed to those two.
P.O.P. Hold it down. That's me. P.O.P. Hold it down. I'm the hold it down type. You know what I mean? I love you. Keith. Don't do this to me.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's why I was
you know the thing on YouTube, P.O.P. Hold it down. I love you. You don't know that thing? You don't know this?
No.
Oh my God. It's like this was a thing it was this girl who was being arrested, and she's like, oh, I'm partially blind, and she was caught like committing a whole crime. You don't know this?
No, we don't have a lot of time on our hands.
Yeah. Question, Amanda. What's a whole crime as opposed to like half a crime? Or like a quarter of a crime?
A whole crime is like when you go all the way in. Kind of crime is like, well, kind of happened. You know what I mean? But like, okay. Yeah, like a misdemeanor is like a crime. Like first degree murder is like a whole crime. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just a lingo.
Yeah.
He hates me saying a whole something.
Yes, he always like, he has a whole fiance. I'm like, as opposed to half a fiance. Like,
yes, at least you haven't been fully engaged. If it's like a day old, it's like a half a fiance. If it's like a week, it's like fiance. Now I'm joking.
No,
I'm joking.
My God. Don't tell me yourself, Mandy.
This is just the way.